How's it going, everybody? So, I had this recorded. I think 3 people got it before I took it down, but I had the same issue with it that I had with the Earth video, except I caught it a lot earlier and decided I really kind of wanted all of my videos to not have that issue. So, if you watch the Earth video, I apologize for like the light double audio and like the slight issues with that. I will do my best to make sure that does not happen again. So, in the meantime, let's go ahead and let's start looking at the lightning cards for Opus 21. So, first off, we have a legend. It is Irvine from Final Fantasy VIII. Job Sniper, 7,000 power, 3 cost. When Irvine enters the field, choose 2 cards in your opponent's break zone, remove them from the game. If 2 characters are removed from the game by this effect, Irvine gains First Strike, 2,000 power, and haste. We also have a special for S and Lightning to choose a forwarder monster of cost 5 or less and break it. So this is a weird one, right? Lightning's had a really big issue with getting archetypal legends lately. Stuff like the Waltz package, like one of the legends was burned on that. Stola in 16 was a great card, but like felt out of place because again it was another archetypal legend. Lady Lilith again requires like crystals to be good. Golbez in 19. So Lightning really's missed on generic playables outside of Man in Black, which is still maybe top 5 strongest cards in the game. And Irvine, in theory, is a very good generic card. It kind of can go in any deck as a 3 of, thanks to the special, and do a pretty respectable job. One of my favorite cards of all time is Alba, which is a 2 CP card that kind of has like half of an Irvine. However, like there's just enough on Irvine's text that I don't know. I feel like because he doesn't directly give you card advantage, he's almost competing with like Alba as a cheaper option and Kadaj as like a more expensive option that just doesn't die. And in those situations, I almost wonder if like he got the effect off twice in the same turn. If they could like let you draw a card with him, maybe, or like if you remove 4 cards in the game by his effect, you draw a card in the same turn. That way, like you can recoup some value when the turn he comes into play. It just feels a lot less good than I thought it would to cast a 2 CP card with a bit of break zone hate and a bit of haste. It's not a bad card by any means. Like there are definitely a lot of lightning decks that will be improved by the printing of Irvine. He just doesn't feel spectacular. It also like doesn't help that like the special is good, but not like run 8 copies of Irvine good. I've considered like running him in like Earth Lightning and then using like Roble, and you could recur like the Irvine backup for this, but like there is no Lightning Irvine backup, so it's really hard to get special fodder. And granted, like Lightning has a lot of recursion, so there's that going for it. I don't know. I just almost wonder if I would play Alba over Irvine, which seems really weird, but the 1 CP difference on a card like this really makes a difference. And if you're looking for break zone hate, there's so many other cards. Like this has a bit of a nombo with X Death. If you cast X Death, and then 2 turns later you draw Irvine, it's going to be very hard to give your Irvine haste. And again, X Death is kind of like the other generic staple lightning card. Not every deck plays X Death, but I almost wonder if this is going to start competing for space with stuff like Estinian. Estinian very similarly like has the damage potential and everything else. Estinian doesn't come with like the break zone hate, but Estinian does cost 1 less as long as you're willing to wait a turn. And Estinian has the Scion synergy. Irvine doesn't have a lot of help outside of Cypher. So I don't know. He's not felt as good as he read when I first like looked at him, and that could be a lot of things. But that doesn't really speak very highly when I was pretty high on this card in my first game with him. I really didn't feel like he did enough to justify playing him over other generic cards, which is a little scary actually. Red Mage. This is the cycle of standard unit category 14 fastlands, as I call them. This is the right element or right element for this because of Grahatia as well. It gives you the ability to run 6 category 14 backups that are pretty solid, which is really good. Not much else to say. Red Mage doesn't matter too much. Ace. So there are a whole wave of Class 0 cadets printed this set. I think 5 in total, and 4 of them are in Lightning. And Ace is by far the best. So Ace is a hero, 4 CP, 8k. When Ace enters the field or attacks, if you control 2 or more job class 0 cadet, draw a card. This is just good text. Reminds me a lot of Firion, where He draws you something on entry, he draws you when he attacks, and he also has an action ability of discarding a card, choosing a forward, dueling it. Ace gains 1,000 power. Again, very Furion-like. Very generic, very good text, makes him difficult to remove. So the big question then is, how hard is it to get those Class 0 cadets on the field? And unfortunately, it says Class 0 cadet. It does not say Agito cadet. It does not say um, Type 0 character. If it was Type 0 character, you could run this in a mini package with like Orisha or any deck that's running Miyu or like the Kali Cheval Miyu engine, right? And he doesn't have any of that going for him. And ultimately, I think that really hurts him because the only generic backups that are actually good that are Type 0 cadets are Rem and Wind. And Wind Lightning is a very, very tight deck at the moment. Maybe there's like a Wind Lightning control list that he fits in. But I don't know. Then you have to like draw one of two different backups. The other option is Trey, but the problem with Trey is Trey costs 3 unless you've already seen the Class 0 cadet. So now if you try to run Ace and Trey, who are the best cadets you can run, you have to draw 2 cadets in your 50 card deck before Trey becomes a good card to commit to the field, and Ace isn't a good card to commit to the field until you find Trey. And you start to run into similar issues to what you had with Hooded Man, with Canes, and everything else. And I think there's still potential for this card. I think there's definitely like scenarios where I could see him being good and seeing play, especially if we get a cadet engine or a Class 0 cadet that searches a Class 0 cadet. But in the meantime, I really feel like this is a card to like hold on to because there's a lot of potential here. Drawing every time you attack on a card that's very hard to block is very good. Again, you only have to see all of the play Furion has seen to realize just how good this card is on text alone. But it's a lot easier to get to 5 characters than it is to get a second Class 0 cadet on the field, as silly as that sounds. And I think for that reason, Ace scares me a little bit. I think it's the best Ace we have in print, though. So there's that going for him. Odin. Odin is one of our hero summons this set. Odin says choose a forward or monster of cost 4 or less. Break it. If you control 5 or more lightning characters, also draw a card. Absolutely brilliant. Monster hate, forward hate. It gets essentially a pseudo cost reduction. This allows you to draw with Man in Black. This is the best summon in Lightning now, maybe paired with Ixion and Ramu. I see a world where this completely overtakes the 3CP Ramu, and you run 3 2CP Ramu, 3 of this, and like 2 Ixion, and you call it a day on your Lightning summons and your Mono Lightning decks. I think this card is that good. So I'm very high on this card. It's just good text, it's good utility. It does literally everything you could ever possibly want. And I think we can start trimming cards like the Opus 13 Odin, where it's like EX Burst, but like on damage 5, it gets cost reduced by 3. You don't want to wait to damage 5. You want to cast your summons now. This is on 5 lightning characters. This has its cost reduced by 2. It's cheaper and better. So I think it's just a better card all around. Fantastic card. Cannot wait to play this. Emperor Gestal. Emperor Gestal is a Category 6 2CP backup. Not a very contested name. Only one previously, which was a dark backup that broke a forward on entry. He is Job Emperor. When he enters the field, you may discard a card, choose a forward in your break zone, add it to your hand. This is great. We've seen a lot more of this lately. Cards like Chadley, cards like Kolka, where like when they enter the field, you can discard a card for a bonus effect. And the only time this would come up is if you cast this as your 5th backup and you don't want to do something else. Otherwise, this card is just really good. It's raiding Chaos Arc decks to get dead Chaoses or Arcs out of your hand. The recursion's fantastic. Anytime other than, like I said, you can't reduce it by paying off of 4 backups. And then for tap and 1, you can sacrifice the Emperor Stall, choose 4 cards your opponent's breaks and move into the game. If they're all the same card type, also draw a card. This is also good. If you can float Gestal and 1 CP, your opponent can't go into the break zone effectively, and he can potentially even draw you a card if you decide that that's correct to do. It is a Category 6 backup. If you ever wanted to get like really cheeky and run like Fire, Ice, Lightning 6 with the Stooges, you could actually do that now and run a title deck with a Lightning backup. I think there's actually a bit of potential for that. I still think the Stooge package is underplayed in 6 in general. I don't expect it to happen very often, but I think if it does, Gestal is a big reason why. And as another 6 backup, there's a lot of value in that, right? Just because there are not enough 6 backups that we don't care about names, and Gestal is a name that we don't care about. So I think he's interesting. I think he'll see some play, and I'm very curious to see what happens with him moving forward. Gunbreaker, standard unit, 14, 4 CP, 8k. When it attacks, deal 2k to all the force opponent controls, and then you can pay a crystal to do it again on attack. This card's not very good. It's slow. 4k cleave is not enough. Crystal for 2k cleave is pretty atrocious rate, honestly. This is limited fodder, essentially. Not much more to say. Machinist. Machinist enters the field, choose a damage forward, deal it 5k, and you can tap to shoot a forward for 2000. This is better than Gunbreaker, but not by much. You just have the downside of, like, why would you play this first effect over playing Ewin for a 1 CP forward that just outright breaks? Ewin is cheaper. It says break the forward. You don't have to worry about, like, rounding the damage up. And the incidental utility of tapping to do 2k is not very high outside of other random, like, pre-damage synergies. So I don't really like this card very much. I don't think it's particularly good outside of Limited, where it might actually be quite good. So keep an eye on it in your Limited drafts. I think Lightning is actually very good this set for Limited, despite not really liking it for Constructed. But I'm not very high on this card, despite thinking that this is a pretty cute artwork, actually. I really like the Lalafell with the machine. Gilgamesh. Common, 4 CP, 8k, DFF, and 5. The DFF is now relevant. It's not super relevant, but this card is okay. When you put from the field to the break zone, you can gain a crystal. And for a crystal, till the end of the turn, he gains haste, brave, and double attack. Damage 3, gains 1000 power. This thing's going to be a terror in Limited, but I don't see this ever being run over the Opus 18 Legend. Opus 18 Legend is just so much more generically good than this card. Maybe as a one of in some like really cutesy DFF list, but those aren't in Lightning anyway. So I really don't see this getting much play. I mean, I guess like Bart searches this and generates the crystal for it, but I don't really rate Bart's very highly personally as well, which doesn't help things there. So I think this card is just fine. It does what it says on the tin, and it's not super great. There are worse Gilgamesh in print, though. Queen. Queen is another one of our Class 0 cadets. DFF, Type 0, 3CP 7k. And a very interesting effect. So she has haste. 3CP 7k haste is already, like, fine. You know, there are definitely fast decks in the format that would like that. If Queen is attacking, if Queen is dealt damage, the damage becomes 0 instead, and she can't be chosen by summons or abilities. So effectively, while she's attacking, she is a tower. She is unaffected by summons and abilities. She can't take damage. She basically can't die. This is actually really interesting because it makes her hard to interact with. You can't Kakkoin her when she attacks. You have to do it before she declares the attack. Once she declares the attack, it's too late. And then for an action ability, you can pay 2 lightning to give her 2000 power to the end of the turn. You can only use this if you control 2 or more Class 0 cadet. So she's kind of like an unblockable, uninteractable forward in the same way that Estinian is. However, by the end of the Opus, I was trimming Estinian from basically all my Lightning decks because I would rather have cards that impact the board state rather than ones that just generically are difficult to deal with when they actually get to attack. And Queen kind of falls in the same boat. If you need to round out a Class 0 cadet package, she's probably one of the better Class 0 cadets in print. But I don't think that's saying particularly much, unfortunately. So for now, I think she is just fine. If Class 0 cadets gets a Searcher, she's maybe a really good one of, because then you could go like search the Queen, play Queen, and then like swing in for lethal. But until the day that happens, I am not particularly high on this card at the moment outside of Limited, where she is very, very strong. Cloud. This is a card I am very high on, actually. Cloud is a WAF 2CP 5k. If you control Elan or Rain, Cloud can be paid with CP of any element. When Cloud enters the field, choose a forward opponent controls. If it's equal to or less than the number of category WAF characters you control, break it. All of this is really good. WAF decks tend to run a very high number of WAF backups. It's not hard to do that in Fire Ice or Fire Earth. I like Fire Ice personally as like a mid-range deck. You can go Cloud. Like for your backups, you can run both of the parents. You can run the girl who forgot her name. Cloud then is a 2CP that breaks a 4CP character on entry. If you run cards like Celes, like Edgar, it just gets better and better from there, right? And it's not hard for this to break a 6 CP, 7 CP forward for a 2 CP forward that'll also have incidentally haste and a ping on attack. Really, really good. If WAF is playable this set, Cloud will be a big reason why. Black Knight. Black Knight is a 2 CP monster from Category 2. When he enters the field, choose a forward or monster of cost 2 or less, break it, and then for 5 CP, you can sacrifice him to choose a monster of forward and break it. So this is kind of like a adventure in Magic, in a way. You kind of get like the on-entry effect, and then like you get to suspend this second effect for later. And both effects are a little overcosted, but there's a lot of utility in having both of these on the same card. Any 2 CP monster hate is really, really nice. Lightning has it, but it doesn't really have a lot of it. Previously, you would run a slot like Thunderdrake, and I think Black Knight actually gives Thunderdrake a run for its money. This can't become a monster, but being able to kind of hold on to this second cast that's like a 3 CP Odin that breaks a forward or a monster is really good, and it's indiscriminate. It breaks anything. And there's a character later on that probably will need some number of monsters in order to be effective, and I think Black Knight has an argument to be one of the best monsters. That said, if you're not being able to use all of the text on this card, I don't know how good it is. If your opponent's on a soiree, you just will never have a target for Black Knight, which has been like the big thing holding Thunderdrake back. Actually, is that Lightning has a distinct problem with monsters that don't continually generate value. The closest one is like Spectral Keeper. Like Melusine a good card, but Melusine really is more of a forward than a monster. Thunderdrake is like solid if your area is like dominated by twins, but it's so situational compared to draw a card or recur a 1-drop backup or 1 cross forward that Black Knight just kind of is in that upper tier of Lightning monsters, and I think it's going to see some experimentation because of that. We'll see where it goes from there. Man in Black. What an unfortunate name. 4 CP 8K Category 4. You can't play the standard Man in Black text where it's essentially also Golbez. Beginning of your attack phase, during each player's turn, choose up to 2 forwards. If your opponent doesn't pay 3, they gain this forward cannot attack or block. So this is like interesting. This will bleed your opponent out of CP very quickly if they have to pay on both players' turns. We're talking about 12 CP per turn cycle. Effectively, that's never happening. The downside here is Man in Black already does that. If you have a Man in Black looping a 2 CP Ramu, you're already telling 2 forwards they can't attack or block every turn cycle. You don't really need to give your opponent the option to keep their Warrior of Light up if they really, really want to. So I think this is just going to lose out because the other name is so important. Maybe there's like a, Category 4 deck that doesn't play summons that like would play this, but I feel like you would just stick some summons in your deck and play the other Man in Black before you played this one. So it's unfortunate because I think this card could see some experimentation in like an Ice Lightning stall deck where you're trying to extract as much value as possible between this and a card like Arcanist while trying to keep like a Griever or a Orphan on field, but yeah, I don't love this card otherwise. Zondi. So here is our other Lightning Legend, and it's an interesting one. 5 CP, Job Dark Lord, 9K, Category 3. When Zondi enters the field, choose a forward. If you control 3 or more Lightning characters, break it. So clearly here, you go 3 backups, pitch, play Zondi, you have a 5 CP kill spell. It is indiscriminate. It doesn't do the Lightning thing of only hitting small things. That's nice. But 5 CP kill something is not particularly unique. There's a lot of cards that have that text effectively, and a lot of them don't have the condition. And I feel like if you're really going for that and you really need the break then and there, you kind of almost want to have this indiscriminately of whether or not you get those first 3 backups onto the field, right? So I think it's another one of those situations where we need all of the text on the card to be good. So what's the second effect? When he enters the field, choose a forward and breaks in. If you control 8 or more Lightning characters, play it onto the field. I first read this effect and my eyeballs popped out of my skull and I went, wow, this is so good for that mono Lightning Chaos Arc deck. This revives Chaos, it revives Fel Thanos, it gives you incidental break, but 8 characters is a lot. The current way that the Chaos Arc Mono Lightning deck is structured, you don't really stack characters on the field a lot of the times. You'll go to your 5 backups. maybe you'll do Alize, revive Alfino to go get your man in black or something, or revive an Ishtola, but if you revive Alfino, you've only got 6 lightning characters on the field right there. Or if you have a chaos on the field, that doesn't count towards this. So you almost have to like go out of your way to get that revive effect off. So I don't know. It's weird because a lot of lightning decks are playing cards that I personally read and I go, this card should never be anyone in anyone's deck ever. 7CP Odin is only good when it's an EX burst. I don't like playing that card. Dia from Opus 2 showed up in a ton of mono lightning decks. And like the idea of mono lightning last set was you would ramp backups quickly, and then you would try to use kind of the haste and removal tools in lightning to kind of run your opponent down with like a mid-range option before they would outvalue you with the fact that every other deck was doing better things than you. And one of the ways they would do that is that they would use very powerful EX bursts to stave off trying to race you, which Odin and Dia really are. The problem with running those really expensive EX bursts, though, is sometimes you have to cast them, and I would rather pay 5 for break anything than 6 for break something of cost 5 or less. Or 7CP break anything, but get nothing out of it. This at least leaves a body on the field that you can recur later, or, you can block with, or you can actually try to win the game with. And I feel like he's going to show up in decks, but I don't feel like he's going to be an all-star in those decks. I really like that we're seeing mono payoffs, but this feels like one of the weaker mono payoffs that we've had. I generally would say, though, that if you're putting a card in your deck only because it has an EX burst and not because you want all the text on the card, you probably should put a different card in your deck. So I would personally be slotting these in over those Adia slots, over those 7CP Odin slots people are running previously, in mono lightning specifically. But that's just me. Shantoto. Shantoto is a 3CP mage backup. When she enters the field, choose a forward, deal it 3k for each element among characters you control. I don't like this card very much outside of limited. This can get pretty big pretty quickly, but it doesn't have a EX burst like Elvis did, which is why Elvis was such a powerful backup. And timing this is awkward. You now have to get all these different colors on your field. Like, you probably have to get 3 different colors on the field to make this effect alive. There aren't very many 3-color lightning decks, and sure, you can go fire Ice Lightning very easily, but then you're running this card that doesn't have any EX burst, that is reactive. Your opponent has to have a 9k forward on the field that you want to hit. She's not a backup on turn 1. So it's like a summon that's in your deck to remove a forward, but you have to keep a backup slot open for her. You can't break her to do it again later. There's no repeated value on her. I just think the card is not very good. Trey. So here's the other decent Class 0 Cadet. EX Burst, 3CP backup. Class 0 Cadet, DFF Type 0. When he enters the field, choose a Class 0 Cadet in your break zone, add it to your hand. This is good. Means that he is effectively a 1CP Class 0 Cadet backup in Lightning, which they've been desperate for basically forever. He also has a special S2 Lightning 1 and tap. Choose a forward, deal it 9,000 damage. It's a good thing he has a special because you need to run 3 of him if you're going to make Class 0 Cadets work, and that's a nice EX burst, but not a lot else on the card. And I mentioned before, but the problem with Trey is timing him is actually going to be very annoying. You need to see a second Class 0 Cadet, but we don't want to run too many of them to get our 2 or more conditions on live. Maybe like Trey, Ace, and like A9 or something. And the special is, like, it's nice to have, but it's overcosted. 3CP, it's effectively costing you 5 CP for a kill spell. I mean, I guess it turns the card in hand into a 3 CP summon that does 9,000 damage, which is above rate. But there's a big opportunity cost to that, and I think that that's kind of a problem. I think it's better than it reads, while also being kind of awkward. And I think that probably one more wave of decent Class 0 Cadets, and we might actually have something. Like, really just one more good name, 1 2CP backup that's like has no text and is Class 0 Cadet and Lightning, and maybe this is a playable engine you can pair with Scions in a mono Lightning shell. But until then, he is only okay. 9 here is our last Class 0 Cadets, DFF Type 0. If he's dealt damage, reduce the damage by 2k instead. Choose a forward and dull it. You can use this if you control 2 or more Class 0 Cadets, and only once per turn. So this reminds me a lot of one of my favorite pet cards, which is the Opus 16 Waft Twins. One had the ability to, at the start of combat, dull a forward if, on entry, you could remove a monster in your break zone. And if you did that, he was a 3 CP 9k. A 3 CP 7k with 2k power reduction is kind of similar. And Lon actually did a really good job because he would prevent 1 point of damage on your opponent's turn and then disable a blocker on your turn. It's kind of like disabling 2 blockers and preventing a point of damage every turn. And it's very hard for fast decks to play into that. However, it does just dull the forward. It doesn't deal with the problem. It doesn't generate card advantage. If the opponent's forward can generate card advantage, he doesn't deal with that. Its only purpose is preventing damage to you and increasing the damage you deal, which is not bad at all. But I feel like we just kind of we need more than that in modern Final Fantasy. And 9 just is not at the level that he needs to be yet. I think he's close. Again, like, if we get the Class 0 Cadet Searcher, this is a really good way to push for lethal in Mono Lightning, you know? But until then, I think this is probably going to be relegated to bulk bins. Hold on to a copy or two of them for sure. There's a chance in the future, but for now, I like it better than every other 9 in print. I'll give it that. But Nailika, Job Kaladef Witch, which I am told is Welsh for Excalibur. Category FFBE. If you control 2 or more category FFBE characters, she gains haste. And when she attacks, choose a foreign opponent controls, dull it, and deal it 3,000 damage. So all of this card feels really strange to me. There is a backup that searches category FFBE, which is nice. If you're in a Wind Lightning deck and you ran Mog BE, you now have a decent little search target that gets you haste and like the ability to close a game. But she's so bad without that. Like a 2CP 5k vanilla if you don't really have that. And the on attack trigger dulls a forward, which is like fine, we'll take that. But deal it 3,000 damage, like, I feel like we should be doing more than that. Like, that could be doing 5k, and this card still wouldn't be amazing. 3k is, like, nothing. You have to pair that with some other kind of, like, incidental ping to, like, actually matter. And a lot of Lightning's power right now is in outright break effects. So I just, like, don't think this card does enough. She just seems very low impact, and the fact she has a... like, this could just say, haste when she attacks, do this. I still don't think I would really rate the card very highly. So I'm not a big fan of this card. She's like okay, but she's not great. Palom, 4CP EX Burst Black Mage. EX Burst, when he enters the field, choose a forward to cost 3 less, deal at 9,000 damage. So this reminds me a lot of the Freecast Odin Summon. EX Burst is nice, but like we've got a weird restriction here. Like it's a 4CP card. It's okay for a 4CP card to do, you know, more damage or have more utility than this. I would almost like this if it was like, I don't know, if it did 7k to higher cost forwards. Like, the fact that if your opponent isn't playing a deck, like if your opponent's on Soiree and they're on a bunch of 4 costs, Palom is a card with no text. He is a Lightning Black Mage, which is good. So if you're in like a Lightning Earth Black Mages with like Waltzes and Robles, he does fit that deck very well. You don't have to run like the fire backup anymore for mages. So I think there is like a place for him in the game, but he seems like oddly built. There aren't a lot of forwards of cost 3 or less that you need 9k to actually kill either. I don't see why they wouldn't just say outright break, but I don't know. It just kind of like feels to me like it's like I can't kill Rydia is the main thing, and I want to be able to kill Rydia with my utility cards like this, so I'm not really a fan of this one, but he's okay. The other thing is that he's trading down. Yes, you're establishing a body, but you're paying 4 CP to kill a 3 CP, which that never feels amazing. Firion. So this is a card I actually do feel pretty good about. So Firion says when your opponent controls 4 more dull characters, he gains 5k power, brave, and Firion can attack twice in the same turn. So interestingly, I actually don't care that much about the double attack, which sounds wild, but I personally would rather play cards that help me maintain control over the board state rather than attacking twice, especially on a card without haste. But a 1 CP card that with a very easy condition to get to 8,000 power, now we're talking. And a lot of your opponent's removal is probably going to require them to dull characters. If they cast a summon, they're probably dulling some number of characters to do so. It's very likely that Firion is a 1 CP card that is going to trade up in value. And then Firion says when Firion or opponent enters your field, chooses a character your opponent controls, dull it. This is also really kind of sweet. It allows him to get his own text if he needs to. If your opponent tries to hold up a backup so that they're on 3 dull characters, you can just play it forward and then dare your opponent to stop you. If your opponent holds up 1 backup with 2 cards in hand, you can just play it forward, and then Firion will force out an Amaterasu in hand if they have it. This is just really, really solid utility all the way around, and it's very hard for this to not trade up. This feels like a 2 or 3 CP forwards worth of text on a 1 CP forwards. It's very easy to play him and get a lot of value out of him in the mid to late game. I really like this card. I think it's quite good, actually. And a Lightning Firion, there's not really a competitor in this slot for him. So I think this card's really good. I'm really excited to play with him. Last card in Lightning is Dragoon, Category 12, Standard Unit, 3 CP, 7k. When he enters the field, choose an active forward, deal it 4k. If you control 4 more backups, deal it 8k instead. Dragoons is a very good deck right now, I still feel. Being able to draw extra cards every turn is very potent. It means that now with the number of Dragoon Standard Unit backups we have, you get to kind of ramp very quickly, and you can kind of use that as your card advantage to swarm your opponent and kind of win the game by just kind of getting to your late game faster than your opponent. And Dragoon fits right into that. Dragoons are currently playing significantly worse cards than this. And it can be revived, it can be pulled back from the break zone when you have 5 backups, and still have all of its text. The only downside is only choosing active forwards, but again, when you just you have this much incidental synergy with an archetype, that doesn't matter as much. I think this card's very good. I think it'll see a lot of play in Dragoons. Probably not much anywhere else, but it really isn't even bad in normal Mono Lightning, because Mono Lightning's goal currently is just to ramp backups to where you can play your Weavers as quickly as possible. And as soon as you get your Weavers down, Dragoon's a 3 CP 7k that does 8k on entry, which is a good card. So I expect this to see some amount of play, keep some foils around, and yeah. In general, I think it's kind of a weak set for Lightning. Dragoon, I'm weirdly high on Firion. I think Odin is fantastic. Gestalt is really, really good. And the rest of it is just kind of Irvine to me feels more like a solid hero than a card that really puts Lightning over the top. And maybe Lightning didn't need the buffs. Lightning was already a very good deck last set. But I don't know, it just makes it feel a little bit unexciting outside of Limited, where I think Lightning is maybe one of the best colors in Limited for this set, if you draft or get a little bit lucky with your rares. So I think Ace has a lot of potential in the future if we get a card that searches a Class 0 Cadet forward, or a Class 0 Cadet backup that searches a Class 0 Cadet forward. Like I said, this is very reminiscent of Firion, which is really, really, really good. So don't sleep on this card for the future, but for now, I think that the cards to enable it just are not quite there yet. So thanks for watching. We got just a couple more set reviews to go, and we are going to be done. And then I've got some box openings in the near future as well. Should be very exciting.